Okay, today we are going to talk about a little bit of lead generation. And we are getting this information from the book, The 7 Levels of Communication by Michael Mayer. And essentially, what this book talks about is the generosity generation, communicating with others in our sphere of influence, extending our sphere of influence, um, and finding out how to be effective and influential within that sphere. So let's first talk about what is a sphere of influence. A sphere of influence includes everyone you know, everyone who knows who you are, everyone who has ever met you. Maybe you've gone to school with them. Excuse me. Perhaps you've gone to school with them. Perhaps they're in your church, some sort of club. Maybe you've worked with them in the past. But the idea is family, friends. But the idea is essentially it's everyone that you've ever met. Um, you want to write down the names of these people. Now let's try and get organized. If you know how to use Microsoft Excel, this is a great program for organization. You can make a spreadsheet, and it's very easy to keep track of things on a spreadsheet. So if you're familiar with that program, in the first column, you're going to want to write down all the names of everyone you can think of. In the second column, you're going to want to write down all the email addresses. In the third column, the phone numbers. In the fourth column, their physical addresses. And then leave a fifth column for some notes on each person. Because as you are trying to keep track of your relationships with, say, 100 people or more, uh, it helps to be able to read a quick note before you make a phone call or before you send an email to kind of jog your memory as to what you spoke about the last time you called them, um, or perhaps if you told them you would do something for them, you can check your notes and see, well, have I done it for them? Have I taken the time to uh, try to do it for them? What am I going to say to this person? Now, we want to communicate with our sphere of influence in a regular manner, on a regular basis. So in one column on that Excel sheet, you also want to write down and keep this updated every time you speak to someone, every time you make contact with someone. Write down the date. So you always want to know, when is the last time I spoke to this person? So you can look down that list of dates and say, well, I haven't spoken to this person in a while. Maybe I need to call them. Also, it's good reference material when you are speaking to them. You can say, hey, it's been 3 weeks since I've spoken to you. Just wanted to call and say how you doing and whatnot. Now, what are we going to talk about with our sphere of influence? Jot down, write this down in your notebook, the anagram FROG, F-R-O-G. What does FROG stand for? F is for family, R is for recreation, O is for, what is O for? I'm going to come back to O. G is for goals. I'm sure Tammy probably knows what O is for. O is for something. Family, recreation, occupation. There you go. Occupation. You want to talk to them about their occupation and about their goals. Now, when you talk to them about these things, that's going to help you to have a natural conversation. It's not going to be a forced conversation. You're going to have certain topics that you're going to know, well, I'm going to hit on these topics in this conversation. I'm going to discuss frog with this person. I'm going to ask them about their family. I'm going to say, have they been doing anything, any recreational activities lately? Maybe there was a holiday, a recent holiday or something you can ask them about. Their occupation, how's work going, whatever the case is. Find out about their occupation. What are their challenges? Ask them what's important to them. What's their goals? Especially when you understand what their goals are, you can help them. And when you speak to your sphere of influence, you want to speak to them with the idea in mind that you want to help these people. You're not talking to them only for the sole purpose of seeing what they can do for you. You want to see, what can I do for them? This is how you're going to build relationships. This is how you're going to build trust with others and eventually be able to get more referrals in business. because what we're after is referrals. If you know one person, that person might know 100 people. If you know 100 people, all of a sudden you're in contact with 10,000 people. So you always want to keep that in mind, especially if those 100 people that you know and that you keep in contact with are good referral sources. So now we just talked about what we're going to talk about with them. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is the communications pyramid. Now, there is a pyramid. You can say, well, can't I just shortcut this and Facebook them? Can I just shortcut this and email them? Or can I keep in touch with people by maybe taking an ad out in the paper once a week so that everyone sees my face once a week? Isn't that keeping in touch with people? Well, yes and no. Uh, the communications pyramid can be found on page 38 in the 7L book. Um, and essentially, there are 7 levels of communication, and they go as such. I'm going to go from the least influential to the most influential. You have ads, advertisements, billboards, newspaper ads, magazines, whatever. You have direct mail. You have emails and social networking, online communication. Then you have handwritten notes. You have phone calls. You have events and seminars. And finally, you have one-on-one communication. Now, those first 3, ads, direct mail, and emails, are very impersonal. These are good for information. If you want to provide people with information, that's a great way to do it, but it's not a great way to build a relationship with somebody. These have very little influence on people. It's the informational zone. Handwritten notes, we are approaching the influential zone. People can see, they can literally see, touch, and feel that you have taken the time to write them a note. And we're going to talk about how to write a proper handwritten note in a moment as well. But to begin, they can see that you've written them a note. So now this is a more personal touch. We're almost in the influential zone. Phone calls is the first step in the influential zone. So you want to make sure that we're calling people. We don't want to just email them or just social network them. We want to call them. We want to speak to them. This is personal. This is influential. After that, we have events, and finally, of course, one-on-one meetings. When you're sitting down with someone, you're at lunch with them, eating a meal with them, of course, this is going to have a lot more of an impact than if they see your face on a billboard. That should be fairly obvious, but it's very important to know. And the communications pyramid, as I mentioned, can be found on page 38 in the 7L book. Now, what are we going to talk about next? Affirmations. Now, this might seem like a waste of time to some people, but for just about every story that I've ever read, or every successful person that I've ever seen, they do this. Tammy's going to explain to you a little more about affirmations and exactly how to do them. But essentially, each day you want to affirm to yourself what you plan to accomplish. Um, you want to make sure that you know that you will accomplish your goals. It helps you to set a positive mindset for the rest of the day, um, a mindset of achievement, and it helps to prevent all the negativity from creeping in. You want to have a positive outlook on the work that you're doing. You do not want to allow negative thoughts to come in and essentially guide you to failure, because everything we do, everything that has ever come into existence began with a thought. A great book to read on that subject is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. But every single thought has the potential to become reality, positive or negative. So if our minds are full of negativity and negative thoughts, then the realities will eventually be negative realities. If our minds are full of positive thinking and positive thoughts, eventually the realities will be positive realities, because that's the only thing that we put into existence. We haven't brought any negativity into existence, and so it's not going to come to fruition. Now, we want to set aside a time in the morning, first thing you do, to do your affirmations. You want to get that done, fill your mind with positivity for the rest of the day. Now, After your affirmations, uh, what I like to call an accomplishment list is the next thing on the agenda. You want an accomplishment list. And of course, we're probably wondering, well, how is this going to get me business? Where does this all come into play? But it all has a place. And first things first, you want to take the proper steps to get to where you want to go. And these are very important steps we don't want to skip. So your to-do list, or what I like to call your accomplishment list, is something that you want to write out for yourself either the night before or that morning, the morning of. Um, Here is an example of my accomplishment list for today. Now, this is just a brief sample. I'm obviously not all the way done with it because I still have a lot left that I haven't accomplished. Now, you'll notice I highlighted the things that I have accomplished. I like to highlight things rather than cross them out because at the end of the day, I can go back and look at all that I've accomplished. When you cross it out, it's like you didn't do anything. You just deleted what you just did. You put all that work into doing an activity, to accomplishing something on your list, and then you destroy it by crossing it out. So get yourself a highlighter, write your accomplishment out, write your accomplishments out, and as you complete each task, highlight it. And then you can look back and say, okay, this is all, look at all the things I did today at the end of my day. Look at all the things I did and I got done. Now you know at the end of each day, you can assess yourself um, because you're going to put certain tasks on your accomplishment list that are going to help you in business, that are going to create more leads for you, that are going to help build your business, and that are going to help you educate yourself with business, uh, that are going to take care of the work that you have to do. All these things are going to be on your accomplishment list. And as you see that you're doing them, you'll know, even if you haven't made a paycheck that day, you'll know that you've put in the work. At the end of the day, you'll see, hey, I put in the work. And if I continue to consistently put in the work, eventually the paychecks are going to come and they're going to start rolling in. So you want that accomplishment list. Um, the first thing on your accomplishment list should always be lead generation. I mean, apart from maybe breakfast and exercise, but very early in your day, you want to do your lead generation because if you don't, you may not get to it later. I'll tell you right now, the accomplishment list, you want to stick to it, but at the same time, be understanding that you will need to adapt. Things happen during the day that are out of our control. Maybe a client calls and they need to sign a purchase agreement and they need help, and all of a sudden you're thrown off your game because you got to go see them and help them to fill out this piece of paper. It's very important. You obviously don't want to lose that deal, so you're going to take time out of your day to do that. Other things are going to slip on your accomplishment list. So lead generation, being the most important activity in your day, should be the first thing you do. Don't leave it for the end because too many times it won't get done. That's the 80-20, the 80-20, forgive me. That's the 80-20 principle, or in other words, the Pareto principle, is that 20% of the activities you do throughout your day net 80% of the results. So you want to do the things that are going to net you the most results. Lead generation is by far the most important thing that you can do each day. So along with your accomplishment list, what you want to practice is time blocking. You see, you don't want to have just a list of things that you're going to do, but you want to set a specific time for each thing. And I'll give you an example. On my list today, 9:30 to 12:30 was my lead generation time. 12:30 was my lunch time. From 1:30 to 3:30 was my administrative time, where I updated all my spreadsheets and I followed up on all my leads that were already leads, not new leads, but leads that we've had that we need to follow up on. I called them all, updated all my information sheets, all the things that I'm keeping track of. At 3:30, I took a 30-minute nap. I put that in my accomplishment list because I knew I was going to get tired, and I figured, you know what, a nap will re-energize me. At 4 o'clock, I studied real estate for an hour and a half, and now for the last 30 minutes, I'm making this video, and this is my day. 6 o'clock will come around, and I will get to my workout. Usually, I do my workouts early in the morning. Today was an especially cold day. It was a Arctic vortex or some weird thing, and I was like, I'm not getting up at 7 o'clock and working out in 6 degrees. It's not going to happen. So, realistically, I set it for later in the day. 7 o'clock is my dinner. From basically 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock is just eating and relaxing. And then from 10 o'clock, I have my some personal activities that I'm going to do, along with cleaning and other stuff. By 12 o'clock, I'm showering and brushing my teeth and going to bed. So it's a general idea of my day, and I'm trying to stick to those time frames. Again, you have to be flexible. If things don't go exactly according to plan, don't freak out, don't panic. There's always tomorrow. Remember that. But for the most part, you want to try and stick to your time blocking. You don't want to have to just take phone calls at any time because it's gonna interfere with your lead generation. It's gonna interfere with your education. Your lead generation is gonna interfere with your follow up on your clients. Everything's gonna get mishmashed. So you want to set certain time blocks and focus on those things during those time blocks. Now, another thing we want, and this is important, is to have a why. Why are you doing this? Some people call it a big why. Some people say you need just a bunch of little whys. But you need to know why you're doing it. That's important as well. So Tammy can talk to you a little bit more about your big why. Um, there are a lot of reasons why you can do it, but that's a pretty personal thing. Um, and now, as far as when we're calling people, and this is going to be taken from the 7 Levels of Communication book, 7L, Michael Mayer. When we're calling people, remember we're using frog. We're talking about family, recreation, occupation, and goals. You also want to call them with a heart to help. How can I help this person? What can I do for them? That's why you want to ask them about their goals, because when you ask them about their goals, now you know, well, maybe there's something I can do for this person to help this person. And that's what you want to focus on. You want to call with a heart to help. If you feel like you're a little bit intimidated about calling people, you're not comfortable with calling people, remember this. If you don't call them, you're being selfish. Because if you're calling them to help, the only way you can help them is by calling them and finding out how you can help them. Excuse me. Finding out how you can help them and calling with that heart to help. So you don't want to be selfish and not call people. You want to call your sphere of influence. And remember, you've got your spreadsheet down. You're keeping track of all the phone calls you're making. After each call, you make a little note. Write the date of when you wrote that note. If you want to learn more about making a spreadsheet, I am happy to help. When you call people, you also want to pay attention to how happy do they seem to hear from you. If you had to rate them from 1 to 10, did they couldn't wait to get off the phone? That's a 1. Did did calling did calling them brighten their day? Was it like talking to an old friend? That's a 10. So you want to rate how well the phone call went. Keep that in mind. That's important. Because when you continue to call people and you build that relationship, eventually you want to get them closer to that 10. When they're about an 8, that's the time to start talking to them about referrals, when you have a really good relationship with someone. Now, some of the scripts that you can use to talk about referrals are going to be found on pages 89 at the bottom and page 90 at the top of 7L. We're not going to go over the scripts here. Tammy can go over those scripts with you in the book. So hopefully you can get yourself a copy of the book, and um, if not, Tammy should have a copy. She should be able to go over some of the scripts with you. Now, when you're working with a client, and we all have at least one client, hopefully. If not, we can pick one up at an open house. When you're working with a client, you want to use the RAS system. The RAS system is a system in somebody's brain that you can activate. It's like the reticular activity system or some weird name. Anyway, the point is, RAS system is something that, for instance, if you just bought a new car, if you just bought a new Hyundai, all of a sudden when you're driving, you notice all the Hyundais on the road. If you just had a baby, you see all the other people with babies. If you're pregnant, you see all the other pregnant ladies. It's just something that in our brain, we, for some reason, when we're going through something, when we're doing something, we recognize those same things in others all of a sudden. We have a much greater capacity for recognizing those things right away. So when you're working with a client, you want to let them know that at this time that they're looking for a house or that they're selling for a house, they're basically going to have supersonic hearing and x-ray vision for other people who who are looking for houses or who are trying to sell a house, other people in their same shoes. And if they happen to hear that someone else has needs of real estate, you want that referral. So you want to mention that. The appropriate script for the RAS system is on page 91 of the 7L book. It's page 91. Now, all of that is important, and it sets a baseline. You want to set that baseline, have that proper mindset, have the proper mental attitude, and also the discipline and organization to get things done. Because once we start talking about all the actual work that has to be done, it can get overwhelming. Uh, it can be overwhelming to talk about things like the different sheets that we need and all the different paperwork and everything. All that stuff can be very overwhelming. This can be overwhelming too when we're talking about lead generation and all the activities you have to do for lead generation, and you don't want to get overwhelmed. That's why you want to have that baseline and be very organized when you're doing this. So now the first activity, and now we're going to put the rubber to the road. This is where the rubber meets the road. The first activity is called Power Notes. This is going to be the first activity that's going to actually help you to start lead generating. And your assignment is to write 50 Power Notes this week. That's the homework. It's just that simple. What is a Power Note? A Power Note is a little note that you can write on an index card. Just something real simple. Let me grab an index card to show you. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's not a big letter. It's just a little note. And you are going to write that power note on that index card and send it to the people you know, the people in your sphere of influence. So these are the people whose address you have. Or if you know you're going to see them, just give it to them, hand it to them. Power notes are very effective. These are, again, we're getting towards the influential zone of handwritten notes. So you want to write them by hand. But there are 7 steps to a proper power note. And I am going to send Tammy the link to that YouTube video. It's a Michael Mayer video. He talks about the 7 steps to a proper power note. And so once you figure out how to write a power note, again, 50 this week. And that's the first step in lead generation. Now, of course, there are many other forms of lead generation. But again, to avoid being overwhelmed, start with this. We're going to add more. Next week, you'll get a whole lot more information. And before you know it, it's going to be piling on so fast, it's going to be like an avalanche. So try to get the first steps down. Do it right away. Don't delay. Don't procrastinate. Start working on your sphere of influence. Put that together. That's another homework assignment. Get your sphere of influence. Make a spreadsheet. Keep track of this. This is really important. So you want to do that. Start working on making yourself an accomplishment list each day, just like mine was. Just get yourself a highlighter, and even if it's include everything in your day, from the meals you're going to eat. What are you going to eat later? Put that in your accomplishment list. It saves you time when it's time for dinner and you're like, well, what am I going to eat? I don't know. What am I going to cook? You already know. You've written it down at the beginning of the day. If you need to pull out some chicken out of the refrigerator, you pull it out at the beginning of the day, and it's defrosted by the time you're ready to eat it. You know what time it is. It's ready for you. So write everything in your accomplishment list. Even, as far as everything. And always remember, we're going to start talking about generosity, how we can help others, and the first step to that is the power note. So go watch the YouTube video on power notes. It's like a 5-minute video, and that should take up to half an hour, and everything should be hunky-dory. And Tammy, take it away. Take care, everybody.